sometimes they don't know the actual extent. They act with undue force, sometimes, like at the G20, without understanding what the law is. Each and every one of these officials, these employees of the government, they swear that they're going to interpret the law. They're interpreting the law. Now, they better interpret it properly and remember their oath to uphold the peace in the public, or else everything is being... Unfortunately, this is what is creating the segregation between, the youth and the police. That are at odds, and this is exactly what they're trying to create with the riots in London. And many other people have tried to push this kind of thinking. There's some people in Ottawa who've done this with when there's homeless protests and stuff like that. Yeah. When they're hanging out, they're doing a squat, and then somebody shows up and says, "Put on masks. Hide your identity," and put up chicken wire in the fence in the windows to protect yourself. These things give the police the jurisdiction to go in with force. The police have no ability to use force, and they need public sway in order to make all of these things happen.
But back to the habeas corpus thing, though, I just wanted to clear this up. So in the States, what they have now is they have this whole other category, which is terrorism or suspected of terrorism, where they don't have to prove... They don't have this habeas corpus go before a judge and say, we do have this amount of evidence. Is it legitimate to hold this person until we go to trial or not? Mm-hmm. They don't have that, suspended it. So that's the thing now.
It's still based on a lot of Magna Carta stuff.
Suspending your rights.
The Republic and the Declaration of Independence there.
And martial law as well. And like you said, the G20, when they took people and detained them in those cages for over 24 hours, sometimes 48. I know people who were detained for up to 60 hours who had not passed before a judge. And so that is not that's
and this
not
is
normal.
What's happening with George too. Essentially, they brought him in. He won't consent to the name, so they just keep holding him. They can't release him. Also because the other charges. But when it gets down to the criminal,
but they released Madame Guy, and that was even in.
They released Madame Guy, but she was not being held under. What it is a third party, which is the courts, is being invited into a private negotiation, right? It was between her and the courts. This is an issue between George and his wife because there's an assault. Now, the police were invited in to help out with this situation. So now the police and the courts have a responsibility to make sure that these two parties come out with they're both happy. Both happy. Okay.
They're supposed to be like a mediator.
That's what the judge is acting as right now. However, it's unfortunately, George has not been released because they believe that George may or may not be aggressive towards Zelda. Not to mention, there's been affidavits presented against George, saying that about the fear level. Because when you are held under a summary conviction and they bring you in. Well, they've always been trying to get George to consent to a medical assessment, and simply George won't consent to talking with anybody unless they give their first name. And all of these doctors who go in refuse to give their first name because then George would be able to hold them personally accountable for the things that they say. You see, when you meet with a police officer and he refuses to give you your first name, be afraid.
His first name.
His first name. Why would a police officer ever be afraid to give you their first name?
They won't do that?
I have had many police officers stand and argue with me for 20-some-odd minutes about the validity of them having to give their first name.
Really?
Not so much that, I get into whether they have a business card, whether they have, they have their warrant ID, right? But do you have your bond number?
And do they?
No, not one police officer in the RCMP, in any municipality or any provincial. I have not met a officer who has a copy of his original business card that he would have got from the Attorney General that has his business card. He's supposed to have it, otherwise he's out of uniform. That's what I've read. That used to be on the Attorney General's website. It's not there anymore. Maybe they've changed the laws. You know how many new legislative acts and bylaws and statutes go through? It's ridiculous. Last year was over 10,000 in Canada.
Wow.
How are these guys passing so many bills, acts, and statutes if they do not, it's just, yes, go.
Yeah, really.
What it is there anybody contesting, not protesting, contesting? When you protest, which is exactly what they want you to do, they have the jurisdiction to say that you are the person and arrest you and violate all of your so-called rights under the Human Rights Code, okay? Are you a human or are you a child of God? Me, personally, I ascribe to being, I am an item with the sovereign. God created man in his image. And if I'm in God's image, and this whole court system is based on that ideology, which it is, I'm telling you now, I am an item with the sovereign. I am just an image of that. I am not a free man. I have a contract to work for the sovereign, to work for the good, towards the common good of society. I am at peace. All of these things, but when they come up to you and say, hey, what's your name? And that's all they care about. They don't care about whether you're being a good person, whether you haven't done anything wrong. This is what the world is coming to.
You seem to have a lot of trouble with the cops. I mean,
I do.
I never do, and I just like to say, I think that maybe it's because, it can't just be because I'm a female, because some females have a lot of trouble. But when you're a mom, I find that cops are really nice to you because you become like this iconic, Madonna figure, the Madonna and child, like it's somewhere in their minds, like you remind them of their own mother, or so there's some things that, George is on the phone right now. So if you have trouble with the cops, no, he's not on the phone. No,
he's on their phone and they're going to call in, I think.
Well, we can maybe hook that up during the break. I'll have to get the number. But yeah, if you have trouble with the cops, well, just have a kid dress really normal and smile. And they won't bother you.
Now, before I was with Grasshopper Media, I could fully agree with you on that it was, I'm a guy wearing a baseball hat. I look like I'm in my 20s or so, and police do pick on me a little bit. But since I've started Grasshopper Media, they're profiling me, and I have proof.
Okay, well, we're going into a break. Stay tuned. I'll be back with Max Radical, possibly George, and I'm here with Max Radical of Grasshopper Media. And also, now I have Farmer George on the line. So I'm going to take that call. Hi, welcome to the show, Farmer George. You're on the air. Are you there?
Okay, hold on a second. We have George on the phone here. George? Here we go.
Hello, George. It's Max.
Okay, I hear you there, Max. I guess I'm calling from McGibby's Guantanamo.
Oh, sounds like he's coming.
You're cutting out.
Housed as a slave person, except this Farmer George. You seem confused on that matter.
If you could start.
Max, can't hear you.
We're having a little trouble hearing you, but you're coming in a little bit clearer. You can feel free to just ramble on as much time as you have there about what's going on with you. Just keep going. We're not sure if you're going to keep cutting out, but just keep giving us your message from jail there.
Well, if it's cutting out, then, we'll have to let you go because, let's see how it goes. But it was really cutting out, like, to the point where we couldn't understand you. So go ahead and try to...
To keep from the people in order to keep them enslaved. The best kind of slave you can have is one that doesn't realize he is enslaved, and that's the case across North America. They say we went to free the people in the Middle East when actually we went to enslave them through a corporation in Britain called Circle, and they specialized in the identification and production of slave papers for every individual that they get their hands on. And they've done it throughout Ontario, most states,